Welcome, everybody, to our presentation on how Oregon's tourism industry can better represent tribal nations in the tourism economy. Starting us off, we have Michelle Liberty.
Welcome, and thank you everyone who's on Zoom with us, and especially panelists. Thank you for joining us today to talk about how Oregon's tourism industry can better represent tribal nations. We've invited Tamara St John from North Dakota Native Tourism Alliance, Sebastian Denoye Picard of the Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada, and Danielle Tejema from Willamette Valley Visitors Association. Our panelists have great insight to share with us, and it's sure to provide food for thought, whether you represent tribal tourism interests or are part of the Travel Oregon Network. A quick housekeeping matter for the attendees: if you'd like to pose a question to the panelists or in general, please use the Q&A option at the bottom of the screen. And depending on how much time is available, I'll share as many questions as I can. A short background: in 2019, Travel Oregon began reaching out to all the tribes to reintroduce themselves, to get caught up on what's going on in Indian country currently, and to gauge the interest in possibly recreating a working group to promote tribal tourism, much like we had in 2008. Travel Oregon's very excited about this and was delighted to discover that the tribes were equally enthused. We've met with all the tribes individually, and we'll be hosting a gathering of all tribes on June 24th from 1 to 3 p.m. via Zoom. At that time, we'll look at what our next steps might be. With that in mind, our panelists today have stories and experiences to share that will undoubtedly help guide us as we explore how to move forward together. So if you would, panelists, I'll let each of you introduce yourself and tell us about your organization. Sebastian, perhaps you could go first, then Tamra, and then Danielle. Thank you.
Ciao koe aweti agwego Sebastian Denoye Yaronta Yatsi Wandatendi Wandake Indare Kwa Niawansio Onwa Entate Kwaye Ayawatsi. Hello, my name is Sebastian. I'm Oran Wendat from Wendake First Nation, just here outside of Quebec City. I'm coming to you live today from the unceded territory and ancestral territory of the Huron-Wendat Nation on the Neo-Ancio. And I'm pleased to be joining you today in my welcoming message, and happy to be with all of you in Thoughts and Spirits. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for the Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada. I'm pleased to be joining you. Our Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada has been created roughly about 6 years ago in a mission to help develop and sustain the Indigenous tourism industry with a thriving, prosperous Indigenous economy, right, through our many nations here in Canada. We have 635 different First Nations communities. We represent as well over 70 Métis First Nations, and also some Inuit representatives as well. So our role has been to really do a lot of marketing with our members. We've been doing a lot of development as well through the many years. And the idea of ITAC is really to take the operators from when they have a business idea, when they have, when they want to join us in tourism, and make sure that we forge a path to them from, like the visitor ready experience to an export ready experience. So that's, we've been fortunate enough to represent over 900 businesses out of, 1,700 businesses across the country right now, what we call Turtle Island. We are extremely fortunate to have some great partnership across the country and also internationally. And we are a non-for-profit organization, a membership-based organization. So pre-COVID, obviously, we were contributing to the GDP to $1.9 billion in the Canadian tourism economy, roughly with 40,000 jobs within the industry. And obviously now COVID hit, and we are waiting for new numbers, but we know it's been devastating. Pre-COVID, we were also outpacing Canadian tourism growth with 23% in the past 4 years. So it's been very exciting. We were unstoppable, but then COVID hit. So it'll be interesting to see how we're gonna recover from COVID, but happy to be with you guys today and be able to share some more of the amazing experiences that we have in our country and how we are partnering to better align success.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tamara St John, and I work for the Sisseton Wahpeton Oyate in Sisseton, South Dakota of the Lake Traverse Reservation. We are a part of the Great Sioux Nation, or the Ochete Shakoi, which are the 7 council fires of the Sioux. And I am a part of the North Dakota Tribal Tourism Alliance. And I come into this position from the angle of a historian and somebody that has worked with cultural preservation for many years. So as opposed to somebody that's coming in from the economic development element, I think with those individuals, we have really built I think a very balanced tribal view of tourism and how it is a really pro-sovereignty type of endeavor to take control of our cultural history by not only defining our own narrative and telling our own stories, but also protecting our cultural sites and our cultural knowledge, the places of importance to us. And how do we do that better than to direct those who come onto our lands on what we can share, what we do not, and how to ensure that we are being respectful in all of those different aspects. So my role within it has been in history, and it is something that I have seen to have an immense value in many different directions. And it's an honor to work with different tribal nations in North Dakota. And we have partners, great partners within the state of North Dakota, as well as those within the economic development realm within North Dakota, and the tribal nations. And some are more advanced than others. And right away, when I think of tribal tourism, I think of the work of 3 affiliated. They are a phenomenal tourism office and really helping to guide the efforts along with Turtle Mountain and others within our region. That work to develop an alliance so that we can better learn as tribal nations how to implement tribal tourism has even expanded to South Dakota. And I am a part of the South Dakota Tribal Tourism Alliance. And it has really brought about, I think, a real passion for tourism and all of the things that tourism can do. When we look at things around us, often as tribal nations, people don't necessarily understand us. The people in our own communities get a better angle, a better opportunity to come and share culture and know us. It is something that I think is not only relationship building, but a real economic driver within our tribal communities. So again, it's a great pleasure to be here and wonderful to hear all my co-panelists, and thank you.
Thank you, Tamara. Danielle?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Danielle Tejema. I'm currently the Executive Director of Willamette Valley Visitors Association and a proud Klamath tribal member from the state of Oregon. The Willamette Valley is defined as the area between the crest of the Cascades and the crest of the Coast Range. From Newburgh to Cottage Grove, it's the largest river valley in the Pacific Northwest. But the Willamette Valley is also within the indigenous homelands of the Kalapuya and Molalla people. The people signed the Willamette Valley Treaty of 1855, also known as the Kalapuya Treaty, with the United States government, and were removed to what would become the Grand Ronde Indian Reservation today. My background has been in tourism for quite some time. I've worked with the Klamath, the Siletz, and now the Grand Ronde tribes here in Oregon. I have history working with Grand Canyon's West Rim, which is privately owned and operated portion of the Grand Canyon in northwestern Arizona and owned by the Wallapai tribe. experience with economic development with the Hopi tribe in Arizona, as well as several casino projects and other economic development projects. Currently, our goals within the Willamette Valley are to increase awareness of how tourism and tribal communities and Indigenous communities can work together, focusing on erasure language, making sure that tourism in general respects the fact that our people are still here, and there are land acknowledgements. And really, it's not about Indigenous tourism per se. It's more about working with Indigenous people and Indigenous communities, and really tying people together, from operators and guides to the communities and the people that live here. So that's really what our focus is. And I'm thankful that Travel Oregon has put this panel together, and grateful to be speaking with you today. Michelle?
Great, thank you. So Sebastian, let me ask you a question. How do you work with the individual Indigenous groups and Tourism Canada or other regional tourism marketing entities?
Well, we do work in a lot of different ways. We do, I mean, for communities, as an example, we organize a lot of networking events that we want to be a part with them, introducing them to this, I mean, this important economy that they might be missing out on. And for us, we've always seen Indigenous tourism as a good way to keep the culture alive, keep the languages alive, and especially have more direct economic impact to the communities by having poets to be a part of, and by having artists and handcrafters, artisans to be a part, musicians even, to be a part of this whole economy. So for us, it is a very vital part. I mean, we do work very closely as well with non-Indigenous partners, but the way ITAC was, Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada, called ITAC. The way it was structured is that we do have provincial Indigenous tourism organizations that we work with, some that were established more than 30 years ago. So what we wanted to do is, we don't want to take their place. What we created was more chapters based on their needs, and they are the one normally talking to members more directly. So in order to do so, as a national body, we really just wanted to support them in their endeavors and making sure that they can provide services to those businesses. Where we saw there was the most growth and the more export-ready businesses were in those provinces that were the more structured. So for us, it was also now once we have those settled in, we wanted to create some other chapters where, there were not any Indigenous associations. So we've been helping to build that, and working with the tribes, working with the communities, working with the band offices, economic development officers, as well working with the provincial governments, and making sure that they understand the Indigenous values and the Indigenous benefits. What we've been doing as well is a lot of research, a lot of studies with regards to economic assessment, and making sure that they know and they are aware of our contribution to this country's GDP, and also to the value that we bring to international guests and visitors. So that's the way we normally and typically work with our Indigenous partners. We want to make sure that we are involved with them and they understand. But then after that, we also work with Destination Canada, which is our brand USA here. Not with the same budget, though, I can admit that. Definitely not the same budget. I've had those discussions before. But Destination Canada has been a real supporter of our work, and they understand as well that there's such a great need, and we are a differentiator for the country when visitors want to come here. We're not the main train pulling the wagons, but we are certainly a pretty darn good looking wagon that people can actually look at. And I don't mean to be looked at in the sense that Indigenous tourism is just being looked at, but in fact that we are involving people within the industry, within our culture, presenting. And I always say as well, for Indigenous tourism, it's not just about powwows and events and casinos. It's way deeper for us. It's it's talking about the relations that we have with Mother Earth, the land, the animals, the plants, and it's also talking about Indigenous culinary. We have amazing museums. I mean, I look, at Travel Oregon and what's happening in the state as well. There's, it's just amazing. There's over 50 tribes and, probably about 70 different Indigenous and tribal businesses. I mean, people can definitely learn a way of life. It's not something that is fake to us. It's something that, you know, we still do in practice. I'm proud to say that I'm a, you know, like traditional practitioner, like that I want to use, you know, the land, and I want to feed off the land, and I want to forage. I'm proud to say that I am. I don't need to go to a grocery store. I have everything handy. I mean, obviously I do it in a very careful manner, but for me and for us at ITAC, it's always been about, you know, like just bringing everything to that perspective and being careful of what we are projecting as people and as marketers, and making sure that the international audience actually understands who we are as person, and not all the seeing regalias and feathers and that part of the culture that is nice to see. Don't get me wrong, powwows are amazing. I love powwows. And I think it's a great time for the families to be learning about the culture and bridging the cultures as well. But I think it's deeper than that as well. And we have to make sure that we can promote that. And in Canada, and I'm sure it's the same numbers in the States, we are looking at 1 in 3 international clients and Canadians are actually interested in Indigenous culture. I mean, we don't have the same visitation as what you guys have in the States, for sure. I mean, we have 22 million international visitors coming in, which, you know, 15 of them are actually American, so which is amazing. But like 1 in 3 visitors actually are seeking Indigenous experiences. So we have to make sure that we offer that space, we offer those websites, those tools, those, you know, like all this amazing material, and we work in partnership with those provincial and territorial associations, and we work with Destination Canada in that promotion and making sure that they can find Indigenous experiences.
Great. Do you go to shows, international trade shows and things with Destination Canada?
Oh, we do a bunch of them. I used to be on the road every 2 weeks to attend those shows, and sometimes you're in China, the next day you're in Japan, and then the week after you're in Chile. So I mean, I miss that, to be honest, a little bit, because my wife was just telling me how, you know, annoying I am, like for the, you know, past year to be at home and not, you know, not traveling. So it's been kind of annoying for everyone, and even the kids are like, I don't remember like you being so impatient. I'm like, yeah, sorry about that, guys. Normally you don't see enough. But anyways, but having said that, yeah, those trade events, and Destination Canada has been the real partners, and we have RVC Rendezvous Canada, we call it here, and it's the largest trade event that we've been working, and we have our own Indigenous pavilion. We've seen amazing growth, and it's always in the interest of Indigenous experiences, and always wanting to put them and put export-ready businesses to the forefront of everything that we do, and making sure that we talk about Indigenous culture, because it is the heritage of our country. I mean, when I say ours, I'm talking about Canada, obviously, but it is the heritage of our country, and it's our culture is woven deep inside the fabric of this country. So we want to make sure that we are seen, we are visible, and that our voices are equally important. And I think more than ever, voices need to be heard, right? We're talking about a lot of racism issues, and like, we're all equal. We should all be equal, and how we can bridge gaps and make sure that we are all the same level is by understanding and visiting each other.
Thank you. Tamara, who takes the lead working with the North Dakota tourism and regional tourism entities in that state?
You know, I think right now, as an alliance, we have been really dependent on our partners within the alliance, like the as I mentioned, 3 affiliated or Turtle Mountain. Some of the things that Sebastian just said resonates so well. What an awesome way to summarize all of the things, the impact that tourism has for tribes. The biggest thing that I think our North Dakota partners do within the state is, just as Sebastian said, offering that space. And I hope that others understand how huge that truly is as a tribal nation, to be allowed that space, to ensure that our voice is present. We sometimes say a seat at the table, but the impact that it has is beyond even just that. Sebastian also said that related to an environment now in society where we're dealing often with stereotypes, or even people that think that our tribal nations are no longer here, or they envision us sometimes as the images of the past. And so more so than powwows and beads and things of that sort, it's been a privilege and an honor to be able to share with people that are meeting us from international countries that are experiencing things related to living culture, that our living culture is something that we're still here. And the things that we see in museums, or the things that people have experienced or seen and from long ago, we're still here, and it's evolving. The things that are that people often think maybe are even gone and forgotten are still here amongst us. So it might be something as simple as ribbon skirts, offering things that are local people that are artisans and people that make those amazing things of cultural expression, to make them available to people. And that little bit carries with them to wherever they go home. And I do find that one of the things that is very clear to me now is that the people that are coming, they are wanting that experience. They are wanting the experience, and they want authenticity. The days when people would come maybe to South Dakota, maybe go to someplace like Mount Rushmore and buy a toy drum made somewhere else. You know, those days are, I think it would be good to have that far behind us, and really be able to show who we are as Indigenous nations, and to show that we have amazing places and amazing spaces. And that really is the value of those partnerships on a state level and beyond that. They're very important to us.
So the tribal homelands there across the state boundaries and even up into Canada, how have you worked with those different groups and not taught, but maybe help facilitate how to work together?
I have to say that the efforts here are fairly new. We have been working with George Washington University. They have been an incredible asset. First of all, it starts with educating us within the tribes, getting us to engage, and then looking at what we have to offer and elevating that before we can even begin to invite people in the way that we might want to. And that is a huge undertaking in itself. So that work, I think, has been on the forefront. And although there are some tribes now, it's expanded into South Dakota. We are still working to engage every tribal nation and to try to build the things that I think most people would think are very basic. The importance of those visitor guides, the importance of having the sort of images for tourism, just to even show that we want people to come, that they are welcome, and that we are extending this as an invitation. Those things are really important. So we are probably working on a more basic level now, but engaging in and following those partnerships in the different conferences, and how to engage beyond our state boundaries, and of course up into Canada, where we do have homelands and we have relatives there. And it is something that I think we are looking forward to. This is truly just the beginning.
Great. Danielle, you're working on a project, I understand, that's a collaboration between the Willamette Valley Visitors Association and the tribes. And maybe you could bring us up to date on what that is, and what have been the challenges and what have been the pleasant surprises.
Well, thank you, Michelle. So Willamette Valley Visitors, WAVA, is our acronym. We use a ton of acronyms in the tourism industry. We're currently working with Travel Oregon, Grand Ronde, all the tribes in Oregon, with Oregon Tribal Tourism Working Group, and yourself included. and trying to create more collaborative efforts to promote Indigenous communities and through tourism. And really, what it comes down to, in my experience, and not to sound like a broken record, but my co-panelists brought up some great points, and I'm just going to reiterate. It goes back to education. So we want to get back to creating those foundational relationships with our tribal communities and Indigenous communities. And we mentioned powwow. Yes, my tribe, Klamath tribe, does celebrate powwow, Grand Ronde. There's a whole powwow trail that we take in the summer, and I know Silet's Grand Ronde, Klamath. We knew which weekends it was going to be. A lot of things were paused because of COVID, but my in-laws in the Southwest, they do not. There are no powwows. So to educate yourselves in the tourism industry on what's correct, what's factual. Tamara mentioned ribbon shirts. They're not in every tribe. So how do you make sure that as an industry representative in tourism, whether or not you're a region or a DMO or an operator, or you're looking to connect with a community, it goes back to that educational foundation and making sure we're not stereotyping. Like Tamara said, that we're getting rid of erasure language. And although, just like Sebastian said, the feathers and the regalia, it's great, but none of the panelists today are wearing feathers, and we're not in our regalia. So we do have a life outside of what is traditionally showcased in mainstream media and globally. And that is what people come and they expect to see. But we do have, again, not to sound like a broken record, we do have fabulous properties, amazing museums. We have communities that are just thriving and really wanting to share their history and their art and their culture. And we invite you to come, but first you have to educate yourself on what's the norm where you are. Whether it's the Willamette Valley, Eastern Oregon, Canada, Mexico, there's Indigenous communities all over the world, and each one of us is uniquely different. The other thing that I do want to touch on really quickly, Michelle, is I have seen in the last 7-8 years in tourism, working in several states and with several tribes, there's a huge increase in demand. There's interest from tour operators, receptive operators for Indigenous tourism and sustainable tourism. They really go hand in hand. They are linked. And as an organization, what Willamette Valley is doing, and I know Travel Oregon's working in the same reality where there's a lot of synergy there, we need to help the communities understand what tourism really means. I bring this up a lot because you say tourism to a small community and they picture that huge coach bus in their small community with no turnaround. And it's a frightening thought. How am I going to put 65 people in this small museum that I have? And how am I going to facilitate this group? So it doesn't have to be something frightening. It can be a conversation that you can have with the community. You have to start at that foundational level. Bring those people in that are decision makers or community members. Let them know what your thoughts are, because tourism has specific requests. It's our job to be that link. So as a region or a DMO, your job, in my opinion, is to be the link between tourism and Indigenous people. So with those specific requests, you have to understand you're dealing with independent people, independent government. They might not have schedules 2 years out to work with a receptive or a tour operator that needs those for their publications and their guides that go globally. They might not understand the commission rates that you're dealing with. They might not understand all the acronyms that we use in tourism. But on the Indigenous community side also, because we're sharing land and history and traditions, we want to do it in a sustainable way. We want to avoid mass tourism. So we need to be communicating with them. What areas can we market? Which is a conversation we're having with Grand Ronde pretty frequently, because we're trying to develop some programming with the culture and heritage side, as well as the casino, again, operating two very different realities there, and finding out how to market so that we don't overpopulate sensitive areas. We don't want to attract visitors to locations during ceremony or traditional times. We don't want to impact some location negatively. So again, it goes back to education on both sides. And there's many people willing at the tribal level to speak on that. It's just a matter of connecting and keeping an open mind and understanding that you can't go in with plans already written. You have to involve the communities at that foundational beginning level.
Yes, I think you touched on how the culture is so important as part of the tourism business for the tribes, but it's also what kind of guides how we promote things and where we can send people and all those kinds of activities, and that it's different with every tribe. So when the tourism industry folks go back home, they need to think about their local groups that they're working with and not watch this and see, well, here's what they're doing there. Let's do that. They really have to reach out and get that conversation going. Sebastian, what non-tribal partnerships have been most valuable to you and advancing, your mission?
Oh my God, there's so many of them, but I'm gonna try to be brief, and I just want to do a bit more mileage on what people have been saying as well, like because for us there were never any borders before. There was no like definitions of states or anything like that, right? And we were just living off the land and moving from to where the food was, and um, so it's just very funny to me that we now are like sometimes stuck with borders and that we can't cross to Canada, the U.S. and according to the Jade Treaty, back in 1794, with what we should as far as First Nation people should be able to visit each other, and that just shows that there were still no borders for us when we look at it. But to get back on your question, Michelle, like for us, definitely Destination Canada have been an amazing partner. They are supporting our marketing campaigns. They are helping us. We've been working very closely with them on new strategic approach as well to include more Indigenous content, include more Indigenous experiences within their own promotions. And what they are really understanding is they're not coming at us now in a sense of, hey, can you validate this information? They're coming at us as true partner, asking us to co-create content, which is very important in reconciliation, because when you're only ticking a box, I mean, that doesn't feel good for us, and it doesn't give you the opportunity to have your Indigenous voice within it. We are part of many now as well conversations with them. We are on many tables as well, which is amazing. We've been working as well, like with a lot of provincial marketing organization and destination marketing organization across the country. We've One of the biggest partner that we've seen coming in past 2 years has definitely been WestJet airline, an amazing partner, and even through their own struggles, especially during the COVID times, they have been super keen in supporting us and helping us and providing us flights and initiatives and grant funding to some of our operators where they have flights going into their destination. So like for me, like this has been like the airlines. I mean, we need to move people from left to right and from a country to another and from a place to the airport to the other airport. So we need to have those relationships with airlines, and WestJet has definitely been a true partner to us. Parks Canada has been for us as well another great partners. We've been working with federal funding agencies, the Tourism Industry Association of Canada. One obviously a lot of different partners, such as the distribution network and receptive agencies. Talking about John View, Discover Holidays, Tunera Voyage, have been vital within like our development and our growth, because without them, it's very hard to, with the budget that we have, to be able to do some effective marketing campaigns and really target those tour operators and work with them in the promotion of Indigenous experiences. So they've been really key on doing all that work with us and creating as well some Indigenous booklets, Indigenous experiences as well, a tariff guide. So that's been extremely helpful. We work a lot with the different cities as well: Vancouver, Quebec City Tourism, Toronto, and more. We've had as well a good relationship with the government of Chile, Mexico, and we work with one very closely, which is the American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Associations. And I just want to say hi to them. I know they're not on this panel, but I mean, they are our counterpart in the US, and definitely have been true partners to us and with us. They've been participating in our events. We do the same in their events, and we co-share on a lot of different things. We were looking at pre-COVID as well to organize some, cross-border initiatives, press trips, and itineraries that we wanted to develop. We have roughly about 30 different key memorandum of understanding, which bonds us to all work together and advance Indigenous tourism across the country, and to bring awareness to, our Indigenous sector and Indigenous businesses. It's been helpful as well to develop our international reputation. So those are like basically our really rough partnerships, and I think it's in any relationship, it's not always perfect, but I mean, at least there's a voice and there's a will, and when there's a will, there's a way to find proper solutions, and bringing those voices all together. And that is through either campaigns, advertising, sales and trade missions, press trips, and more. And what our research have shown us as well is, especially with COVID, people are looking at wellness, escaping the largest cities, learning about medicinal plant, hiking, outdoor adventures, the return to a more simplistic way of life, forage, to live off the land. Well, guess what? We've been doing that for over 10,000 years. I mean, we are the perfect person, the perfect individuals to bring you on the land. Well, I'm not going to give you my proper like real spot of fishing. Don't kid yourself. Like, I'm never going to do that because those are my spot. But I'll bring you to good spots. You'll catch some good fish. And you know, like, I just want to make sure that we are spending time together and understanding and showing each other a good time. And this is, for me, transformative travel. And this is really what people are looking at. And also, like, one thing that I haven't touched on before is Indigenous tourism also help the communities to save spiritual spaces and landmarks. So we need to look at a more holistic way, and as well to be able to help our communities understand their role. And we talked about over tourism at some point as well. How can we control that? How can we keep the community safe? And that's their will right now. And we need to protect the elders because they are the one with the knowledge. They are the one with passing down that knowledge. It's super important. It's vital within our culture. But we need to help the youth understand the values of our industries. And that's one of the biggest challenges that we have moving forward. Staff, a lot of people right now have been going to work in different industries. It's been a challenge. But I mean, that's right now what we're looking at. But we need to make sure that we have youth working in our industry so we can have a culture alive for the next 7 generations.
Thank you. Tamra, the North Dakota Native Tourism Alliance has an advisory council that's made up of corporate and state agency people, and what's their role with your organization?
Those individuals, as we stated before, there are people that come into this from many different angles. As I said before, myself, I'm a historian. I'm not somebody that is coming from the economic development area or arena. And so all of these different partners are here to advise us in how to build that foundation. I can't stress that enough, that is really where we're at now, and how to engage and who to engage with, and to study the possible impact of those things. We are very dependent on those people that can provide the data that's needed to support what we're trying to do. How do you collect that data? All of those individuals are very, very important in it. I wanted to mention also, I really appreciate the comments that are made by my co-panelists here. It truly is hitting on the things that I think all of us that are engaged in Indigenous tribal tourism, why we're here, the want to preserve, protect, revitalize, as well as impact our tribal communities. A lot of our tribal communities here are very impoverished. We have very little jobs and resources available. And how do we sustain? There are individuals that, and I'll say it this way, like, for example, to have people that come, and the people that we know within our communities that are able to, first of all, maybe show them how we traditionally fish, spearing fish for years in our beautiful lakes, and how the lake might be named after that particular practice of spearing pickerel. And or to how did we eat it? How did we cook those traditional foods? The gathering practices, and how does that turn into very much fine dining. And those individuals may not see themselves as that level, but it's our job to connect to the tribe and those individuals that not only have that knowledge, but also putting money into their hands, as an economic driver for them. I think that those things, wanting to create that entrepreneurial spirit in each of these individuals, whether you happen to be a hunting or fishing guide, or somebody that is invested in cultural practice in some way or another. The impact of things like even just within our visitors guides, I really think that when tribal people are telling their own story, you can see it, you can hear it, and especially as another individual, and those that are truly interested, deeply interested in knowing who we are. And so the things like seeing even just signage that shows our language, it tells such a broad story that this particular place, here in America, we are educated in a society that history starts when Columbus arrived. And here we are, we're telling our history that our indigenous people have been here long before. And a lot of that evidence, whether we have it through oral history or if it's not written down, it is there. It's there in the lands. It's there through things like archaeology. It's there in many, many ways. And the evidence of our past is something that I think is most precious, most precious. And those things, I think when shared, create understanding with people around us, within our surrounding communities, within other countries. And it is something that I think has impact in such a positive way, far beyond, I think, that people often grasp. So it's powerful work that everybody is doing. I love the comments that are being shared.
Well, certainly your organization and Sebastian's have an exciting network of partners. That's incredible. We have a question from someone who it's just like disappeared. Or no, here it is. So Danielle, maybe you could answer this since it's kind of locally oriented. How do we educate ourselves in an effort to ensure that we are appropriate in our introduction into the various communities we are interested in promoting, but are ignorant in how to promote those Indigenous communities?
Yeah. Thanks, Michelle. I did answer that in the chat as well because I didn't want to run short on time, but I would recommend contacting your regional DMO or your local DMO if you're in the US and even Canada and abroad, but contact your local agencies first, they're in tourism, to see where they are as far as creating that connection and partnership with local Indigenous communities. Otherwise, reach direct to the tribes. There's always, culture and heritage departments that are more than happy to share their resource to educate people. We've mentioned on this panel a couple times that often there's already booklets and things available to educate, but also museums and other natural resource locations within the tribal communities. Reach direct, and oftentimes you can it's as easy as going onto their website and finding someone to connect with directly. But again, you can start with your local DMO and see where they are with their own Indigenous education. And just to reiterate, communities need to be equal. So if you're ignorant of it, don't feel like it's not an option to go direct to them, and invest the time to understand how they're operating and where they are. They are sovereign nations. They need to be recognized as such, but they're often, the doors are open, they're willing to share, and we all invite you to come and learn.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all, Tamara, Sebastian, Danielle. It's been great. I hope there was a lot to be learned out there for the people in attendance, and we've got a lot to look forward and a lot of work to do both. So thank you, and thank you everyone who attended.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.